when evil happens, people reach out to him. People cry out to him, and they turn back towards him. We see it through the history of our Jewish people. Whenever they were exiled and persecuted, they turned back to God. And it happens over and over again. Could it be one of the ways that God brings us to him? It could be. I see it happening.
Hey everybody, this is Arielle Randle with Juice for Jesus, and I'm here today with Jeff Morgan, who you may know from our channel. He's usually hosting our conversations with Jewish believers in Jesus, but today I have the incredible opportunity of hosting him and asking Jeff a little bit about what it's been like this last month living in Israel since the war in Israel broke out on October 7th. I'm here in New Jersey on the East Coast of the US, and Jeff's in Israel. And so it's just a good chance, I think, for us to open a dialogue about what's it like right now in Israel, but also for Jewish people around the world. What are we experiencing, and what do we have to share to encourage one another and encourage those who want to stand with the Jewish people right now? So Jeff, maybe just tell us a little bit, the last month, what's it been like for you and your family?
Wow. First of all, great to be here on this side of the camera. And I remember it was 6:30 in the morning on October 7th, and air raid sirens just start going off outside our home and all over the country, apparently. My wife jumps out of bed, grabs our 3-year-old from his bed, and takes our 11-year-old from his bed and rushes them into our shelter room. We have a bomb shelter room in our apartment. And that's where actually my older son sleeps. That's his bedroom. It's just fortified. And we're in there wondering what is going on here. And while we're in there, we had no idea what was unfolding in the south, the southern part of the country, in the area on the Gaza border.
Yeah.
And it was only later in the day that we started to find out some of the horrors that were taking place down there live and at that moment. And so as people were being slaughtered in cold blood in the kibbutz and at the party and everything around that area, we were, hearing the Iron Dome missiles going off and blowing up incoming missiles from the Gaza Strip out of the sky. And we thought, okay, what's happening here? Israel's really good at defending herself. We have a great army. Well, hopefully this will blow over by the end of the day. And we had no idea the magnitude of what was going on there.
Yeah.
So that was how we woke up that morning. And I have to tell you, I felt a million miles away from what happened to those people, those Israelis down on the border of Gaza at that time. I felt a million miles away, and I wanted to run and help. But, there was nothing I could do at that moment. I had to be there for my family while we were trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
So as things have unfolded over the course of the last just over a month, finding out what really went on down in the south and the evil, unadulterated evil that was perpetrated on people down there, it wrecked me because I'm a Jewish person. I'm living in Israel. I'm American and Israeli. This is happening in my own backyard right now.
Yeah.
Literally, as I look up in the sky and see missiles flying over, and figuratively, as this is my country. This is where I live. This is where I'm raising my children, and this is happening here. And hearing the stories of the children and the murders, the styles of the murders and the slaughters and what was going on. I don't know if you want me to bring up any of that, but I forced myself to watch the actual footage. And some people say, you're nuts. And I said, well, I want to be able to relate to what my people are going through here. What are my Jewish people going through here? When someone says it's the Holocaust all over again, what are they really talking about? Are they exaggerating? I made myself watch that footage. I said, oh, no, they're not exaggerating. They're not exaggerating. The footage it burned an imprint into my brain that mobilized me and made me want to just do anything that I could to help our people. I went right up to the north with my colleague Elisha, who had to go to the army. I had to take him to base that day because his parents were unable to. And I said, "Take me. I want to enlist. I want to defend my land and my country." And they said, "We can't take you," because I immigrated to Israel after I was old enough to enlist in the army. So I did a program in the army, but I didn't do service. So they couldn't take me in. So I just started doing humanitarian work all over the country. And I have my other YouTube channel called So Be It, which shows our street evangelism and street ministry. And I'm like, what do I do with this now? You know what I mean? How do I go out and talk to people? And I was praying and praying. And I said, God, what can I do on the streets? And how can I encourage people? How can you help me encourage people? And what I noticed was thousands and thousands of Christian comments coming into YouTube on Jews for Jesus, on my on the other YouTube channel, So Be It, and in support of the Jewish people, praying for the Jewish people, praying for the people of Israel, and loving the people of Israel and the Jewish people. And I thought, our Jewish people need to see this right now. And so I went on the streets and I shared with them the love and support that the Christian community is sharing with them and sharing with me right now. And it was a blessing. It was just an amazing thing. And so since then, I've just been figuring out ways to keep people informed, taking care of my family, doing humanitarian work around the country, delivering food and goods and services to displaced families, and just praying for the people of Israel and mourning. And, it's shocking. There's still, 239 hostages right now in Gaza. And my heart breaks. I cry almost daily because the suffering, it's just unimaginable, and so, the Jewish people are crying for help. They thought they had, the strongest, best army in the world, and they were secure in their homeland. And then that trust was shaken.
Right.
But what it did was it mobilized the Jewish people. And the Jewish people as a nation have come together here in Israel in a way that I've never seen before. In normal day-to-day life here in Israel, when there's no rockets and no terrorist attacks, people are honking at each other. You got the hands, like, come on. It's very kind of New York style, impatient, let's go. And people are insulting people on a regular basis, but yet less offended because it's kind of just natural,
Right. Yeah.
But yet that's happening less and less. Less people honking at each other. People are more caring for each other. People have kind of come out, religious or not, are coming together and serving the people of Israel, serving in the army, coming together. There's there was over 1,000 ultra-Orthodox Jews that enlisted in the army, to support Israel. And that's unheard of.
Yeah.
So
wow. I didn't know that.
It's amazing. Yeah. So the people of Israel are coming together in such a way that's really, really inspiring. There was such division before the war. There was such political division in the country, protests and people against, Israelis against Israelis. And then when this happened, everyone said, okay, what really matters?
Yeah.
What really matters is the preservation of the Jewish people. And this is, it goes back to, the through the history of the Jewish people, through the Crusades and the Inquisition and the Holocaust and the threats of the annihilation of the Jewish people. And as this, people group that we belong to, one of the smallest people groups in the world, what is there? There's something around 16 million Jewish people, in the world right now, give or take. We've been around just as long as, most any other culture in the world as a people, yet we're not billions, we're not hundreds of millions, and so, there's a lot to be said in the Bible about that too, but wow, the heart of the Israeli to come together right now and serve the country. It's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, and thank you for everything that you shared. It's both, heartbreaking and beautiful and devastating. And it's all those things all at the same time. It's really complex. One of the things that I read, in the first few weeks after the war broke out was a quote from someone who'd been asked, do you have any family in Israel? And this person was like, oh, just several million, basically like we're all family. That's how Jewish people around the world feel. Even here in the US, I mean, a lot of Jewish people, myself included, have been to Israel many times, as a child, as a teenager, on birthright, this thing or that thing. And so feel very connected to the land, have friends that have made Aliyah. But I think even if you don't have a friend or a family member who is directly affected, I think a lot of Jewish people who've grown up and live in the diaspora like myself, the land of Israel, this gives a certain security to Jews around the world, right? It's an anchor for us. And so I think that shock of that loss of security was felt not just in Israel, but by Jewish people across the globe. And we've seen this huge rise in anti-Semitism around the world, which has truly been devastating. And I've had some moments of just like, wow, it just feels like feeling honestly like kind of depressed and like it's too much to bear.
Yeah.
And then I've also seen like some of what you're describing. I mean, in Jews for Jesus, I've been amazed how many Christian organizations, pastors, individuals have just flooded out of nowhere and been like, how can we help? We'll do anything. We want to stand with you. Even, vendors that we have like that are totally secular, not Jewish or Christian or anything. And they've just been like, how can we help? And so that outpouring of love and support from people who do love the Jewish people and stand with us now is also so beautiful to see and so precious. And as Jewish believers in Jesus, I think it's been a really critical moment for us to be able to speak to the Christian community and call on them to stand against anti-Semitism, to stand with local Jewish people wherever they are, to stand with Jewish people in Israel globally. And I think it's also been hard for Jewish people across the world to wrestle with just all the complicated feelings of like, maybe different people have different opinions on foreign policy, and I think people feel like we're devastated at the loss of any innocent lives, and we want peace. And how do we get there? So there's a lot of complex feelings that get stirred up at a time like this. I mean, I want to make sure we definitely put the link to the footage of you going out on the street and praying with people and sharing prayers with them in the description of this video. And everyone should check that out, because I think that is a picture of peace and hope are more important than ever in moments like these. And you've been sharing that. And I don't know what else you might want to say to speak to that in this moment.
Yeah, I think that if we look to external worldly things to find security, ultimately they're going to let us down. I mean, we saw that here in Israel. If you depend on the army to keep you safe, it's going to let you down at some point. If you're depending on your spouse to keep you happy, he or she is going to let you down at some point. That's the way of the world. It's the way of the human heart. And so what we can ultimately put our trust in is the one that will never leave us or forsake us, the real Prince of Peace that doesn't change. He loves us unconditionally. He loves us with a love that's unimaginable. It's a perfect love. And that kind of love you can't find in the world. And so, I find my hope in that. I find my future in that. And that kind of love that Jesus gives actually helps me to love better and to have peace within myself. And it also brings the nations together in peace. Living in Israel and being at going to a church here in Israel, or a community of believers, Jewish, Indian, Chinese, Korean, Arab, from all different parts of the world coming together in peace.
It's beautiful.
Because we're all worshiping the same God because of Yeshua. That is something that we can really hold on to.
Yeah. Let me ask you, a difficult question, Jeff, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. But what would you say to someone who's wrestling right now with, okay, sure, maybe these good things can come out of great evil and there can be these little moments of hope. But at the end of the day, why does God allow evil to happen? How could there even be a good God with these types of horrors happening in the world?
A great question, and it's one that's worth talking about. I think that the first thing we have to address is if anyone's asking why such evil, why not so much good? The question is, can there be evil and good without God? Can there be evil without a standard of good? If you know what I mean. So if someone says what Hamas did just over a month ago was evil, what are you basing that against? And so when, as believers, we understand that God is the standard of good, and anything that deviates from that standard is evil or bad. And so there's a lot of people that are atheists that might ask that question.
Yeah.
You know, why so much evil? But yet, if God doesn't exist, then there's really no standard outside our own opinion. And then that leaves for the Hamas to decide what we actually did by opening up a woman's stomach and tearing out the fetus and killing her and beheading the baby is good. And hey, who are we to say that they're wrong? Because good and evil are just subjective. The fact that good, real good and real evil exists tells us that there's a standard that we abide by and that we live by. And I believe that not only does objective good and evil exist, I believe that it exists because of God's existence. And so why does he let these things happen? Ultimately, I don't know. But what I do know is that when evil happens, people reach out to him. People cry out to him, and they turn back towards him. We see it through the history of our Jewish people. Whenever they were exiled and persecuted, they turned back to God. And it happens over and over again. Could it be one of the ways that God brings us to him? It could be. I see it happening. And also it gives us an opportunity to, in the face of evil, darkness, and bad things, to be a light, to shed light in difficult to show the love of God in these circumstances. God gave us free will to behave in any humanly fashion that we want to. He didn't make us into robots.
Right.
You know, if he wanted us to only do good, he would have programmed us and we would have been robots. But he gave us the free will to choose him or not to choose him. And because God is good, by choosing him, we choose good. And by deviating from God's plan, from God's commandments, the 10 commandments, you know, murdering and adultery and lying and stealing and, you know, honoring your father and mother, and, coveting and keeping the Sabbath and so on and so forth, remembering the Sabbath. By deviating from those commandments, we get into evil or bad behavior. And so I can't ultimately give you the answer. Only God knows why he would allow something like this. But usually after a storm like this, something horrific, like the Holocaust, the Jewish state is born. That the Jewish people have a homeland. So we can only pray for good things to come out of such evil.
Yeah, no, that's profound. I mean, I think what you said about free will is really true, because if we have free choice, you know, then we can't control what other people choose, but we can control what we choose, and we can choose love and not hate. I think that what gets complex, though, right, is that these things, they exist on like a micro level. Like each of us has our choice, you know, to choose evil or to choose good. But then on a systematic level, it's like, whatever you do, we're all part of systems that hurt people. like global economies. And, it's like there's these systems of injustice in the world that we act like can't escape from. It has to be broken. And that like the cycles of oppression and injustice have to be broken. And I think that, to me, that's one of the things that really draws me to the person of Jesus, is because, this is the essence of our faith, right? That God did not, just look from heaven, down and judge the earth. He came into the world on a mission to not just show people how to do good, which he did, but actually to break toxic cycles of evil. And I think a lot of times people think we mean that, and we do mean that on a metaphorical level of like, well, you can follow Jesus' teachings and choose love, and that is true. But it goes deeper than that, because, he laid down his life and then rose from the dead, defeating death. But another thing that's really interesting, I think, about Jesus' mission on earth is, a lot of people were coming expecting him to lead a revolt against the Roman Empire, right? Which was oppressing the Jewish people at the time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we're like, oh, well, but he defeated death, which was even, more powerful than the Roman Empire. But here's the thing. Jesus ultimately did defeat the Roman Empire, you could say, because it was only a few hundred years later that the Roman Empire declared Christianity the state religion, and the message of Jesus was spread across the entire earth by the Roman Empire, right? But Jesus took over, this militant evil and reclaimed it for good, but not through the weapons of men, not through, fighting battles and swords. He did it in a much more sophisticated way, right? Of that he laid down his life to serve. And then that message was so powerful that it actually took over the world. And so I think what you're doing when you're going out to serve, it's really a rebellion and a revolt against evil. It's rising up in a way that is so much more profound, in a sense, even than like what you were saying about that you wanted to go join the IDF. Not that would have been bad, but I think you're fighting a really important battle when you're going out to serve and show love to people who are hurting right now. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, yeah. My pleasure. It's the least I could do. And to your point about the Jewish people expecting a Messiah to save us from our enemies. Okay, the Messiah saves us from our enemies. Okay, what about our sin? What about our sin? Okay, so he saves us from our enemies. Then what? How are we going to be saved from our sin? We need a propitiation for that sin problem that we have in our heart that disconnects us completely from God. And so, to your point, a Messiah can save you from your enemies, but it doesn't really matter if he doesn't save you from your sins.
Well, I think that's what's so compelling about the New Testament, which I hope everyone will go watch our other episode where you share your story and you also challenge people. Like, if you've never read the New Testament, read it for yourself. It's an incredible book. And the promise of the Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament really is that full restoration for our hearts, for our souls, like you're saying, from our sin, but also restoration of the earth, that there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and that's spiritual and also physical, that it's holistic. And I think there's a lot more that could be said, but I think everyone should read the scriptures for themselves and wrestle with these ideas because they're powerful.
Yeah, agreed.
So awesome. Well, Jeff, keep doing what you're doing. Please keep encouraging everyone there in Israel and the land. We're standing with them from all over the world. Jews, non-Jews, we are praying for the peace of Israel, and we're helping however we can. Let's put a link in this video where people can watch you out on the streets, praying with people, sharing that message of hope. And also, if people want to give a special donation to support the efforts of what you're doing, and actually our whole team in Israel, has mobilized, I think it's like over 900 volunteers. They're working with other congregations, other ministries on the ground, and we're serving people just across the country, Jews, Arabs, anyone who's in need. We're helping people find housing, food, basic necessities. Because right now, as we're recording this, I mean, rockets are still firing. People are still being displaced from their homes every day. There's a lot of needs. And if you're watching this, you can definitely help. We'll put a link where you can make a special donation, and Jeff and his team will use that to go out and serve people. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone watching this, for your prayers and your support at this crazy moment in time.
Yeah.
And Jeff, thanks for everything you shared.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.